Do you currently ride a Bosch e-bike featuring the particular 2-point motor mount system and the original first generation frame bushings? Then in this video, I'll show you how to easily swap them out and upgrade to the new frame bushings. But how exactly can you tell if you still have the original first generation frame bushings? You can tell quite easily by taking a quick look at the bushings themselves. The new frame bushings are entirely smooth and uniform in texture and have absolutely no ribbing whatsoever, whereas the old ones have distinctly visible small ridges on the outside and are also noticeably slightly ribbed on the inside. And you can also easily tell them apart by the bolts, because although they are exactly the same overall length, the distinctive head on the new bolts is slightly more tapered towards the end for identification. So it has a sort of small step in the head, whereas the old ones are completely cylindrical with a flat surface, and that's how you can identify which system you currently have. Please note that the old bolts are not compatible with the new frame bushings. So if you now decide to replace the frame bushings, you must also replace your motor bolts. The frame nuts used to hold everything in place are exactly identical though, and you can conveniently reuse them. But when, and specifically why, should you actually switch to the new mounting system for the 2-point motor mount? If you don't have any problems with your e-bike and everything is running smoothly, you don't really need to do anything, because as they say, never change a running system. However, if you notice that one of your frame bushings is, well, faulty, or if you hear noises that you suspect are coming from the motor area, or if you see that the frame bushing is already coming loose or has perhaps even been pushed out of the motor, then it's definitely high time to upgrade, and then of course to the second generation with the new bushings, not the old system. Of course, you can also upgrade just like that without any urgent need. For example, if you're currently doing maintenance and cleaning everything thoroughly and you happen to have the motor out anyway, you can take the opportunity to install the new bushings. To successfully upgrade your motor mount, you will first need to get the new frame bushings. Just like with the motor bolts mentioned earlier, you have a specific choice between a narrow version and a wide version. As the name suggests, these two components simply differ in their overall length. In the wide version, one of the frame bushings is significantly longer, almost twice as long as the smaller narrow one. And the motor bolts are also different lengths, meaning you have one long one and one short one. And that's also how you can tell which system you need. If a particularly long bolt is installed on your motor, or if the bolts aren't the same length, then you need the wide version. Although the narrow version is more commonly used, so if in doubt, you should opt for the narrow one where the bolts are exactly the same in length. You'll also need a T40 Torx screwdriver to loosen up the motor bolts. And then a properly calibrated torque wrench that you can set to 30 Newton meters with the T40 Torx for tightening. In addition, it's quite possible that you'll need some additional specialized tools for things like the motor cover or the chain guide in order to successfully remove them from the bike. And it might be necessary for you to have a special press-out tool for the old bushings if they aren't being replaced due to wear, but as in our case, just because we want to show you they can be stuck quite firmly in the frame. And that's exactly where this specialized frame tool comes in handy, which you can then use to carefully press out or knock out the bushings. To swap your frame bushings for the new ones now, you first have to remove the motor, of course. And if necessary, loosen the cover and chain guide as well as all the connected cables. You can find a comprehensive and detailed guide on how to remove and reinstall the motor in this video. As a first step, you have to press out the old frame bushings. For this, we will use the special cyclist tool, which was co-developed by Bosch and only works for the old frame bushings. With this cyclist tool, we approach the bushing from the inside of the frame and can then press the bushing out from the inside to the outside. In our case, as I already hinted, it was relatively difficult because we have almost a new bike here that hasn't been ridden much and has no issues. So we begin the process of working here with a soft face hammer and the old bolt to carefully knock them out. And that worked absolutely perfectly for our needs. Next, you insert the new frame bushings, precisely positioning them exactly where the old frame bushings used to be. Make sure that the new bushings don't extend or stick out into the motor compartment yet, but are flush or positioned slightly on the outside. and then you can put the motor in, it's always recommended to insert the rear bolt first so that you can then swing the motor in and out like that. And an additional tip from me here, get a buddy to help you out. A second pair of hands is very helpful here for holding the nut in place and also for screwing it in. That makes everything much easier. Now first, lightly thread everything in by hand, then insert the front motor bolt in the same way through the new frame bushing. Push the new bolt through the motor until it reaches the nut on the opposite side and tighten everything lightly. Next, we have to ensure that the new frame bushings are seated firmly against the motor. Usually that happens simply when you push the bolt through. Alternatively, you can also use a small flathead screwdriver to push a bit against it on the left and right, so that the new bushing really sits against the motor through the frame, and then tighten everything completely with the torque wrench set to 30 Newton meters. At this point, please be aware that it may feel a bit tighter at first. This is because the conical head of the bolt is now threading into the new bushing, basically causing it to expand slightly. This creates a very firm connection with the frame, ensuring that it can't loosen over time. So you'll have to do a few more turns until everything is really tight, and as I said, stop at 30 Newton meters so that you don't damage any parts accidentally. Very important to note during all this work, none of the threads, nuts or bushings need to be greased or treated with adhesive in any way. So we're working completely dry here, and you shouldn't, or rather, you're not allowed to use any grease there so that the motor is really securely fastened in the frame. So just install the parts precisely and carefully as you receive them from us. Now you can proceed to remount all the components and attach any accessories that might be necessary, and of course plug the cables back in so that everything functions correctly. Once you are ready, climb up onto the saddle and take a brief spin around the block for a little test ride to make sure everything is functioning okay. And when you get back, you should definitely carefully retighten all the screws, specifically set to 30 Newton meters, to be absolutely sure they are properly and securely seated and the bushings are completely secure. Now, you won't really have to do anything else with these bushings in the future. These can now stay in place for the entire life of the bike unless you happen to remove them by mistake or for whatever other specific reason. In that case, please be sure to use new bushings, because once these bushings have been expanded, they simply cannot be reused. Just go ahead and get yourself some new bushings and press them in again. You can find the replacement bushings, the motor screws and the right tools in our shop, of course. Feel free to check it out if you'd like to support us and get these special replacement parts. If you have any more questions about replacing motor bushings or motor frame bushings, head over to the comments and I'll be happy to answer them. Give the video a like if it helped you out, and we'd love it if you subscribe too.